Hello, hello. How are you? It's Monica with Connective Whispers by Monica, compassionate and intuitive life coaching. And thank you for coming and checking out my channel. And if you don't mind, if you like the content that you are receiving today and going forward, would you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and also like this video? And if you can, if you feel that it can be beneficial to someone that you know, please share it with them, because sharing is caring, right? But anyway, the reason why I was reaching out is because I've been wanting to do this video for quite some time, because I've been really getting busy with readings and doing some parties. And so what happens is that one of the main questions that is always asked of me is, and it's a question that is a very valid question, is how did you know? How did you know that you were psychic? And my answer to them is, I don't know. I really didn't know. It's the truth. I didn't know that I was psychic, um, because I just thought that was the things that were happening to me were weird, and it went in different. I guess, to say more than anything else, it went in different steps and different phases. Some of them, which I wish that I can get back, because um, I've just I feel like I was born with many gifts, and some of them are just like super amazing. Like my gift of manifestation. When I was a child, I can literally say, "Oh, I wanted this," I would get it. Or I would be in a contest, and I would guess the right number, or just so many things. It's just crazy. But more than anything else, I feel that as far as the psychic component is concerned, I feel that the best answer is I don't know, but I can tell you how I got to where I am. That I can tell you. And I think that that's common for many psychics, because I believe that we are led. We are intuitively led without knowing that we are using our intuition to get to where we are. The things that um, the things that interest us the most. I mean, I guess it'd be the same thing with sports, or any other type of hobby, is that people who like soccer are intuitively led to play soccer. People who like baseball or basketball are intuitively led to, or they gravitate towards that 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 hobby, right? So for me, it was that where I gravitated towards the whole, and I think it had to start with Houdini. I remember watching this show about Harry Houdini when I was a little girl, and they were doing a seance to try to communicate with Harry Houdini. So I think that that was where it really began for me. But as far as really honing and owning my gift, I think that began to happen when I was in my 30s, when I really became aware of what was going on. But honestly, I didn't really know until I was about 40, 41, maybe 42. And I'll tell you about that later on. But most importantly, for those who want to know about how do they know that they're psychic, with me, I used to be like things like I would think about somebody and bam, they would call within 5 minutes. Or I would say something in my mind to someone and they would answer me, or I would know what they were saying and I would answer them. But like, it wasn't coming in my mind. I would just blurt something out and they're like, oh my God, I'm sure that's happened to you too, right? So they're like, how did you know that I was about to say that? Just didn't know. It just happened. Um, then things like when I was young, growing up, I would see I would see shadows in my house. I saw my father after he had died. A year later, after he had died, I'd seen my father as well. So little things like that. The most interesting event happened when I was in my 30s, I guess my early 30s. And I had been having a conversation with someone in an elevator. And it was a very it was a I would say it was a pretty in-depth conversation. It was as long as it was an elevator ride, but I remember it having some pretty significant content. And I remember the next day talking to a colleague about this specific individual through the family owner, because a family member. What happened was that this individual that I was having a conversation with in the elevator was a family member of one of my patients, and they were no longer my patients because they were on another floor now, and as a result, they were assigned to another case, a social worker. Anyway, the next day I was in the office after I'd had a conversation with this individual. The next day I was in the office, and I was overhearing a conversation about the patient that I had been taking care of that was now with a new social worker. And so I had just happened to ask, my coworker, well, how is so and so? And she responded, oh, he's fine. It's his wife that I feel bad for. And I just immediately said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, she died. I said, when did she die? She said she died in January. I said, you don't want to know what I said, but it was, get the what out of here. I said, I just saw her yesterday. She goes, you couldn't have seen her because she died. I said, what do you mean? I said, I'm telling you, I had a conversation with her in the elevator, right? She's like, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. So this happened to me before when I was in ninth grade. I forgot to mention that. But anyway, so with this particular story, I was tripping because I was like, wow. I said, that's crazy, because I just had a conversation with her in the elevator. It was the day before. I could tell you exactly to this day when it was. It was in May of 2002, and it was like in the 20s of the month. And the reason why is because for 2 weeks straight it rained every day, right? And again, like I said, I was walking into the elevator, and as I was walking into the elevator, I saw her coming in through the front door. So I held the door open for her, and she came in. She walked towards the other corner of the opposite corner of the elevator, and I was just asking her how her husband was doing, how she was doing. She told me she was fine and that he was okay, and I was like, okay. So, we had a very pleasant conversation. She got off at the floor. He was there at the nurse's station where they commonly put patients that need a little bit more supervision. They sit them by the nurse's station. And so she walked over to him, and that was the end of the conversation. She stood right next to him. And then the doors closed, and I went back, to doing what I was doing. Didn't think anything about it. But then I thought about it a few days later. And then I started putting the pieces to that story together, and I will tell you about in another video about what happened to me on 9/11, which that's another story in itself. So what I was thinking when I went back to dissect that moment in time is that there were things that were a little out of place, and they weren't. The biggest piece was the way she had passed away. She had a heart attack on the way to the hospital, unfortunately. But she happened to be shoveling some snow before it happened. And I remember that it was raining, so when she came in, she was wearing a coat, and she had an umbrella, so I didn't think anything about it. That piece canceled out fine. But then when we were going up the elevator, and the door opened, and she went towards her husband, what I did notice is that he didn't even flinch. He didn't even look up and acknowledge the fact that she had come or anything. He was just sitting there. which was a little interesting to me. And that's one of the things that stayed in my mind, because she just looked at him, looked at me, and she just like did it like a nice little smile, and that was it. That was it. So that was a really interesting piece that happened, and I think that that really, really freaked me out. And I think that um, because it freaked me out so much at that point, that I think that that piece of me as a medium, or maybe it's just a rare, those are rare occurrences, but I have not had a scenario that I know to my knowledge again since then. More of the connections that I've had have been the third eye connections, and when I mean by third eye is that I actually see them in my third eye. I can explain them to the person that I'm sitting with doing a reading for, or there's different characteristics of things that happen. And so, with that being said, that was one of my most sorry, one of my most significant experiences as a medium, where that happened. Um, so, like I said, I didn't know. I know now, 20 something years later, I know now. I just didn't know then. Is it 20 years later? Yeah, 20 years later, believe it or not. It will be 20 years later. Anyway, but you know what I mean. So that was one of the most significant things. The other things, I remember driving home one day, and I was just very tense and very, very nervous, very anxious. And so as I'm driving, and anybody knows who drives on the Cross Island Expressway in Long Island, Queens to Long Island, it's crazy. So I remember weaving and like being very skittish on the road. And I remember like swerving out of the way of cars and whatnot. And I it was very weird that that happened. I made it home safe, but guess what happened? I got into a car accident in the driveway of my brother's house. He backed into my car. So that was like spirit warning me. It's just that I did not put the pieces together in time to avoid that in that instance. So there's been instances like that. And so there's just a lot of random things that could happen to you as you're evolving. Just things that you know that otherwise you would think that you wouldn't know. Again, crazy dreams, funny dreams. Not funny, but I mean, like, interesting. Let me just say interesting dreams that you may have where, um, man, I wish I could think of one because I've just had so many. But I will tell you the example of this store that's where I got my where I started receiving my intuitive courses. So in that specific class, in that specific store, I'll never forget it. There were these stone hearts, these crystal hearts, beautiful crystal hearts. And I looked at those crystal hearts and I said, my God, I saw these in a dream. Now, mind you, I had never seen anything like that before. But I had been having a dream. Like I had it more than once, I would say. So it was a reoccurring dream. I had it more than once where I had seen this basket, and in the basket there were these stone, beautiful, different color hearts. And sure enough, in that store, not even 2 weeks later after having that dream, I saw those there. So it was almost as spirit saying, "Oh, look at these flashy, beautiful little hearts, little stones." And then 2 weeks later, it was more like, validation. Here you are. This is where you're supposed to be. So I really hope this helps. I do readings, so definitely reach out to me. I'll put my information in the bio section below, how you can reach me if you want a reading. I do oracle readings. I do I do mediumship readings. I do parties in my area. I do FaceTime readings. So if you're interested in having a reading with me, I would love to connect with you. In the meantime, if you really did enjoy this content, would you please subscribe to this channel and also just hit the like button. And of course, if there's anything else that you would like to know, please let me know. But until then, have a very good day, a very good day. And, you know, do the best you can to make the world a better place by committing one random act of kindness at a time. Until then, take care.